the vaccine timeline. Everything was good in 2019, but in the 9th of January, WHO announced that there is a virus in China, but at this point they still has doubt about the roots, what would become the COVID-19 pandemic. And in the 11th of the March, WHO declaring COVID-19 as a pandemic. And the Director General of WHO said at a briefing in Geneva, the agency is deeply concerned by the alarming levels of spread and severity of the outbreaks. In the 12th of May, it was 2020, not 21, the Trump administration and Astrazeneca announced a collaboration to speed the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. It was Astrazeneca, which we know for now. And they suspect that the first doses will be available as early as October of 2020. The next step was that HHS, it's Health and Human Services, associated with the United States Operation Warp Speed, a project to rapidly develop and deploy a COVID-19 vaccine, explained that the vaccine would be provided for free for the people from risk groups, for elderly patients and other vulnerable populations who cannot afford it. The next step was by Moderna. Data from phase second trials of Moderna show that the doses produce immune response in all three groups of 15 volunteers. The company was the first to enter large-scale human trial. The next step was in July. Two experimental vaccines, one from Astrazeneca and the other from CanSino Biologicals, shows promising results against COVID. The next step was the announcement of the agreement of Pfizer and BioNTech to produce the vaccine. And they had a deal that could expand to 600 million doses if the vaccine receives approval of for an EUA, emergency use authorization, from the FDA. The next step was by Moderna, the first phase third clinical trial to examine a vaccine candidate. Announced that they increased funding for $472 million. They move now brings the total investment made by the biomedical advanced research and development authorities to $955 million. Actually, in the 3rd of August and in the 11th of August, it was a few points by the Sanofi. GlaxoSmithKline started to produce their vaccine. Trump was reaches deal with Moderna, and Sputnik, Russian vaccine, received a registration certificate from the Russian Ministry of Health. The next step was that US rejects COVID-19 vaccine efforts. The other steps was with the effectiveness with the vaccine. So let's see, it was GSK vaccine trials in the beginning. Moderna reveals efficiency results. Pfizer and BioNTech announced the 95% of effective of their vaccine. Actually, they applied in the for the FDA for emergency use authorization to get this vaccine approved. Astrazeneca had had the results at the 23rd of November. It was 90% of effective, and it was a big day for the future of the vaccines. It was 11th and 18th of December in 2020. FDA agrees for emergency use for Pfizer and for Moderna. On the 3rd of December, UK, United Kingdom, approves emergency authorization for the Astrazeneca for the Oxford vaccine, and in the 20th of January, Russian authorities have applied for registration of the Sputnik in the European Union by their authority EMA. On the 22nd of January, COVAX, it is a department of WHO, which was made to make a vaccine available for all countries in the equal rules for every country. And COVAX announced their plan how it will work. And now, for the, as you see, 18th of February, we have this coronavirus vaccine tracker. It is New York's time link, you see. You can check the actual updates for the coronavirus vaccine, which are on the different phases. So phase first, second, third, authorized, approved, and abandoned vaccines. So now we have 4 approved vaccines, which are widely used to stop coronavirus pandemic. And you can always check by this link the actual information about the coronavirus vaccines. So how it was produced? I know that there are many questions about the vaccines, about their effectiveness, of course, safety, but all the vaccines were produced by the strong algorithm, which you see on the screen. At first, of course, it is preclinical testing. During this, scientists test a few vaccines on cells and then give it to animals such as mice or monkeys to see if it produces an immune response. The next step is phase 1. Scientists give the vaccine to a small number of people to test safety, dosage, as well as to confirm that it stimulates the immune system. The next step in the phase 2, scientists give the vaccine to hundreds of people split into groups, such as children and the elderly, adults, to see if the vaccine acts differently in them. Their trials further test the vaccine's safety. So if the vaccine is safe for more widely use, it starts phase 3. Scientists give the vaccine to the thousands of people and wait to see how many become infected, compare it with volunteers who received a placebo. These trials can determine if the vaccine protects against the coronavirus, measuring what's known as the efficacy rate. And phase 3 trials are also large enough to reveal evidence or relatively rare side effects. Early or limited approval. What is this? Many countries have given emergency authorization based on preliminary evidence that they are safe and effective. For example, China or Russia and other countries have begun administering vaccines before detailed phase 3 trial data has been made public. Experts have warned of serious risk from jumping ahead of these results, but it is due to the local authorities. The next is approval. Regulators review the complete trials results and plans for the vaccine's manufacturing and decide whether to give it full approval to widespread use. And the next phase is paused or abandoned vaccines. If investigators observe worrying symptoms in volunteers or some adverse events which are classified as severe or vaccine doesn't show the efficacy, they can pause the trial after an investigation. The trial may resume or be abandoned. So on this slide, you can see some statistics about the COVID-19 candidate vaccines. So you can see that 19% have one dose using. So it means that you need only one dose to be immunized, to get immunity from the coronavirus. It is only 12 candidates and 19% of the existing candidates. Mostly of candidates have 2 doses scheme. It is 60%. You can see the examples of the scheme, the 0 plus 14, 21 or 28. The 4 approved candidates have this scheme 0 plus 28, but some of them have a period for the second dose from 21 till 28. One candidate had 3 doses scheme, and you can check with this slide the route of administration. There is 3 oral candidates, and the other one are injectables, so subcutaneous, intradermal, and intramuscular. Most of them are intramuscular route of administration and 2 doses. So to understand why do we need to be vaccinated and how does it work and is it safe? Let's talk a little about the types of the vaccines which exist from the coronavirus infection. I just tried to make it in the most simple way because it is very difficult, but I hope the pictures will be useful. So 3 main approaches to making a vaccine. The first one, when we use a whole virus or bacteria, but we are talking about the virus, we use a whole virus. The next approach is when we use only a part of this virus, for example, some protein. And the third, it is very interesting variant. It is only a genetic material using for the vaccine. Actually, only COVID-19 vaccine was the first which is used in genetic material. So it is a start of big researches, which can be very useful for humanity. So the whole microbe approach, there are three types. Inactivated vaccine. So it was a virus which was inactivated by some physical or chemical conditions. So it is so weakened, so it can't cause the infection inside your body. Live attenuated vaccine, it is live virus or live bacteria. There is not so popular group of vaccines because there is a little, but it exists a risk to be infected but it is weakened bacteria or virus too, but it is live. And very interesting third type is a viral vector vaccine. We have two candidates for COVID-19 vaccine. It is Astrazeneca and Gamaleya. It is viral vector vaccine. We will talk a little bit later about them. The next one is subunit approach. So we can take from the virus a little part. Mostly it is a protein. It is a little subunit which can be recognized by the immune system and which can produce the immunity on this only subunit. This subunit is specific for the virus or bacteria, and it is enough to be to get an immunity from this subunit. And the genetic approach, we have two candidates, Moderna and Pfizer, which are mRNA vaccine. I will try to explain how it works. To understand this, let's see on the right part of my slide, a little coronavirus. It is called coronavirus because he have some corona in with these spikes. It is spikes which are accumulation of the spikes protein. The virus have a gene which is coding the producing of this protein. So it is a genome which we can read, produce these spike proteins, and these spikes are existing on the virus membrane. So because of this spikes corona, it is called coronavirus. So let's talk about the vector vaccines. Vector vaccine is a spike genome which is coding the spike protein which is live in the other virus. Let's talk more about this. Astrazeneca and Gamaleya used adenovirus. Adenovirus, it is acute respiratory virus, but it was attenuated and modified that in case it is in your body, it couldn't cause an infection. But when this virus with this part of the gene with the which are coding the spike protein entering the cell, this bubble with the adenovirus is not useful for producing the immunity, but you can get from this bubble this DNA in the cell nucleus, it is becoming an mRNA. And this mRNA molecule, with the special cell ribosomes, it is reading, kind of translating, but reading. We can read this information from this gene, and we get a formula of these spike proteins. 3 spike proteins making a huge spike, which is produced on the membrane of this cell. So we don't have a virus in our organism. We have only these representatives of the virus. And these spikes become to be antigens inside your organism. Antigen, it is a causative agent for which we need to have antibodies. So these cells, this cell become an antigen presenting cell. Antigen presenting cell. So because of these spikes on the membrane, it is called antigen presenting. For this presentation, we have a reaction from T helper cells. It is cells of our immunity. They are the first who can read this information from the membrane. And the next step, these cells transport this information to activate the other cells. It is B cells, which are producing the antibodies. So in case when the virus gets inside the organism, we have produced antibodies which kill the virus, so we can be so we will be healthy and not infected by this virus. If this virus gets into our organism again, we will still have this antigen presenting cells. It is cells with memory, so they can activate the killers. It is the name of the other immunity cells, which are killed all the infected cells. So that's how it works. And when we are talking about the vector vaccines, the main part is this adenovirus bubble. Astrazeneca and Gamaleya vaccines have different percents of effectiveness. You can ask why, because they use the same technology, the same virus, but AstraZeneca shows 76% of effectiveness, and Gamaleya shows 91.6%. There is one differ between their technologies. Both of them have 2 doses of the vaccine, but Gamaleya uses two different types of adenovirus during first and second vaccination. The immunity react for this bubble as for the not important part of the intracellular stuff. But AstraZeneca uses only one type of adenovirus. So at the second time, when people get the second dose, these bubbles are killed by the immunity too. Because of this, AstraZeneca have a little bit lower effectiveness than Gamaleya. When we are talking about the mRNA vaccines, it is vaccines produced from the genetic material of the cell. It is a little bit different from by the technology. We are using still this genetic material, this code for the spike protein. But this code is dressed for the lipid membrane, lipid bubble. In case of the vector vaccines, we have a viral bubble. In this case, we have a lipid bubble. This lipid bubble is very unstable. Because of this, we have a different temperature change for the vaccine. You can see that for the Moderna, it is minus 20 Celsius temperature, and for the in average, and for the Pfizer, it is minus 70 degrees. It is due to this unstable lipid bubble, but when this the cell membrane is consists of the lipid, so it is not difficult to get into the cell. And after this integration, the process are the same. We are reading this mRNA. The cell is making spikes. The spikes are presented under the membrane of the cell, and this antigen presenting is activating of our immunity, and then the procedure is the same. So it is differ only on the first step. Here you can see the most approved vaccines. It is from the 1st February, but situation doesn't change. You can see Pfizer and how it works. It's mRNA vaccine, as we talked. Moderna, it is mRNA vaccine too. Gamaleya, it is vector vaccine. AD, it means that it is adenovirus, and these numbers is types of adenovirus, serotypes. And Astrazeneca, it is two adenovirus vector vaccine. The others are protein consist, inactivated. It is types of the vaccine. They are still in the phase. You can see here the phase of the trials. And the local approval of the authorities in the different countries. Most commonly reported adverse events, which are reported for Pfizer and Moderna. As we see, it is mostly headache, the biggest part of the adverse event, kind of fatigue, dizziness, nausea, chills in the different percents. To talk about the safety of this vaccine, of course, we can talk about the people who have allergy for some components of the vaccine, but in the other case, if you are not allergic, you may have slight symptoms in the injection locus, or kind of the starting of acute respiratory infection, like mild headache, chills, and others. So it is the most commonly reported adverse events. Here you can see a global COVAX plans. They announced it on the 22nd of January. And they are trying to be very competitive in equal distribution of the vaccines of the different types. But it is difficult to provide this ultra cold chain for Pfizer. And COVAX is trying to do all for the countries with the low or average level of life. So by the COVAX, they have a strategic advisory group, SAGE. It is a principal advisory group, and they have such plan. In a first phase, they want to vaccinate healthcare workers, older adults, because they have the biggest risk for severe and mortality. And those with serious health conditions. So if you have risk factors for the severe COVID-19, you will be vaccinated at the first phase. The second phase is to send doses for the countries with vulnerable healthcare system, with to countries under risk of high impact of COVID, to countries with vulnerable population, to the refugees, asylum seekers, workers in these settings too. The COVAX produced with WHO the tool. It is called VIRAT. It includes an Excel template for countries to complete and to cover node. And this VIRAT, it is kind of recommendation for kind of plan for Ministry of Health, how to realize this vaccination plan, how to produce a roadmap for the vaccine, and how to make it possible, how to make possible vaccination in all countries. So Ukraine have this roadmap too. You can see the link for the actual roadmap on the Ministry of Health site. It is planned to have 5 stages. It is like a COVAX recommendation. The first line, it is medical staff and non-medical who works in healthcare facilities for inpatient care during coronavirus disease, people who live or work in residential care institution or long-term facilities for older people, military personnel. The second stage is to vaccinate other medical staff and healthcare workers, people over age of 80, social workers. The next stage is the third. People from 65 till 79, employers of the different authorities of Ukraine, teachers and the workers of the educational sphere. The first stage, it is people from 60 till 64 years old, adults from 18 till 59, with concomitant diseases, so with some risk factors for severe COVID-19. Other categories, population and professionals group that are in risk factors, so it is which are live in Ukraine and who live in non-governmental controlled areas too. And persons who are in the place of detention or in a pre-trial detention facilities and workers of the place of detention. And the last one, it is adult, which have no risk factors, no comorbidities, and which are living, which are citizens of Ukraine and which are living in the non-government controls area. So it is kind of a plan for Ukraine And you can see on this slide a link which was created by Ministry of Health. It is planned that we can register for the vaccination there, but it doesn't work now. They only start with this link and with this opportunity to read about the vaccines and the other information. So you can get on this link the actual information on the local language. And I know that I'm waiting for your question about which vaccine should we expect in Ukraine. It is announced on this link 4 candidates for Pfizer. The private authorities will provide these conditions with ultra cold chain, so we can expect a Pfizer. Vaccina will provide the conditions for the Astrazeneca. We don't have enough information about the Chinese vaccine Sinovac. It is announced that we will get some Novavax, but this Novavax is not finished the third phase of the trials. So answering on this question, I don't know. And I hope we will have this information as soon as possible, because it was announced that the vaccination begins from the 15th of the February, but it is still not. So I hope that we will be vaccinated as soon as possible, and we will finish with this pandemic, and we will have an opportunity to back for our do-pandemic life. So that's all. Thank you for being here, and if you have any question, I'm open to discuss.
Thank you, Dr. Viktoriia, for presentation. I see the right hand from Tatiana Rudenko.
Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. Tatiana Rudenko, UNHCR, Field Office Lugansk, Non-Government Control Area. I have two questions. Question number one, you have already explained about several types of vaccine, but you didn't mention regarding the people over 64 years old, which kind of vaccine is applicable for this category of people? And question number two, the procedure, the modality of how residents located at NGCA will be vaccinated and where? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The first answer is about the age groups. Due to the actual recommendations, we still have not so much information about, not so much trials to say the most effective vaccine for the exact group. So the actual recommendations are that if you have a possibility to be vaccinated, any candidates if exist, you should be vaccinated. Because we don't have an opportunity to choose. So the main recommendation is to be vaccinated. And I think that when we will have an opportunity to choose, we will have more data, and for all groups of the for the children, for the pregnant woman, for the adult, and for the others. And answering your second question, the plan from the government is to create a mobile brigades, which will consist from the doctor to nurses and backup of the doctor and backup of the nurses, and the driver, which will provide the vaccination on the regions where it is not where people do not have an opportunity to go to the hospital or the medical facility.
Thank you, but my question was, question number 2, regarding people who are still at NGCA. Correct me if I'm wrong, according to the governmental plan, these people who want to be vaccinated should go to government control area to be examined by a doctor and to be vaccinated. But as far as I know, there is 2 stages of vaccination. So do you know something about this plan in more details, like where these people should stay, for how long, and whether this medical examination will be free of charge or they should pay for this? And of course, where it is possible to pass these tests before being vaccinated, for COVID. Thank you.
Due to the actual recommendations, you don't need to be vaccinated. You don't need to be tested before vaccination. But how it will work exactly, I cannot say, because it will be decided by the local authorities, and I'm not sure that it is my competition or my area of the study. So the vaccination will be free for everybody. In this COVAX program, all the vaccines are free. So we are getting this vaccine by the COVAX monies. We will get the vaccine from the governmental budget, and we will get the vaccines by the other authorities, which will help in the buying of the vaccines. But for the people, it will be free during this vaccination program. When we will have this vaccine in the pharmacies, it will be for money, yes.
Thank you. It is well received. And may I ask for providing the clarification regarding if a person has chronic diseases, which chronic diseases can influence badly to be vaccinated, and with which chronic diseases it is possible to be vaccinated. Maybe you have such information, or maybe the link to such information. It would be very useful for us to read. Thank you.
Let's see, I want to look. It is a recommendation to be people. I told about the comorbid. I'm just looking. People who have a comorbid, so it is chronic diseases, it is recommended to be vaccinated, of course, because if this category of people will catch a virus and get a coronavirus disease, they have very high risk in mortality and in severe cases. So they have to be vaccinated. Their actual health condition should be stable, not decompensated. So if they are stable, they should be vaccinated to reduce these complications which can be produced by the coronavirus disease. And these recommendations are in these documents. You can see it on all these slides. It is in road trip.
Thank you.
You can see this fourth stage, adults with concomitant diseases that are at risk for complications and deaths due to COVID-19. The chronic diseases or cardiovascular or kind of diabetes are risk factors for the complication.
Hi, Victoria. May I ask a question? I see
Yes, of course,
no
yes.
one else with raised hands. Actually, I have a couple of questions. The first one is more theoretical. Could you please explain the difference between developing antibodies through COVID sickness and vaccination? I mean, is it recommended for those who recovered recently from COVID and tested on antibodies and still have them in the body to be vaccinated or not? And related to this is question, what is the difference for time frame of efficiency antibodies developed after COVID and vaccine? Because I understand that both have limited effect, limited protective effect. This is a one batch of questions on difference between COVID recovery and vaccination. And second question is again about NGCA mostly. One day we predict that probably we will be able to be vaccinated commercially rather than waiting for phase 4 and 5, depending on age and conditions. That we expect that probably some vaccines will be made available on the market, and then we will hopefully start the campaign of vaccination of UN personnel earlier than we go through this national plan on commercial basis. In this regard, I have a question and maybe suggestion. Does FLOT consider already a possibility of delivery of vaccines to NGCA if, of course, they will be bought or prepaid by staff members residing in NGCA with the appropriate cold chain? If you may know, we did this exercise for flu vaccination, but the requirement for temperature were lower than we know COVID vaccine requires. And it was a challenging task to deliver through convoy, and probably it will need us to take more efforts for COVID vaccines to be delivered to NGCA. Just a question if it's on the table now with FLOT to support this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, for your question. The first one, it is very interesting question. I was waiting for such question. There is no answer, still no answer. How long we will have this immunity produced by the vaccination? We just need a little bit more time to get the 3 and 4 phase of the trials and to vaccinate a huge amount of people to get this data and to collect this data about the terms of the immunogenicity of the vaccine. We reach the immunity after the virus, and we get this immunity after the vaccination. And this is specific antibodies for coronavirus. But people who was sick, who had coronavirus disease, and who didn't, should be vaccinated in the equal times, because only one case when you shouldn't be vaccinated if you have active coronavirus infection. When the symptoms are decreased, you can wait about 3 months but it is kind of a recommendation for the first time to get this dose for the people who need it more for now. But after these 3 months, you should be vaccinated too, after the acute infection. You don't need to check your antibodies level before the vaccination because actual information which we have are saying that you may have a high level of antibodies, but you may be infected instead of this level of antibodies. So we are waiting for the data about the terms. And again, the priority is to be vaccinated. I can say more because we don't have this information. About the second question, I want to help my colleague, Ivan Frois, to answer this question. Ivan, please.
Hi, hello, colleagues. Hello, Viktoriia. Well, flood, within the flood program, we are not expecting any delivery of vaccine, especially because this is not going to happen soon. So once vaccines will be available at the private market, I think that it will be for us to check with the private clinics in Kiev as we did for the UN staff, so that we could procure and organize the vaccination process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan.
Well, so I suggest to have the last call for questions to Dr. Viktoriia or to the floor team in general. And in case we will not have questions within last 2 to 3 minutes, I suggest Dr. Viktoriia to give a close note, just a quick sum up regarding vaccination against COVID-19, and to finalize this presentation and wish everybody a good weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I think we can wait a few minutes. To finalize all this information, I want to say that when we will have a vaccine in Ukraine, it is very important not to be only not to be vaccinated, but to say for our parents, to our grandparents, to our friends with some comorbid, with some chronic diseases, and that it is very important that we can stop a pandemic, and we should make these efforts. I know there are many fears and myths about this vaccination, but you can see that the adverse events of this vaccination are the same for the flu vaccine, for the other vaccines. It is safe to get a vaccine. The biggest point which you can get it is no immunity for the coronavirus if the vaccine will be not effective. So if we can stop these, we should do this. and if you have a general physician in a governmental healthcare facility, they can call you and ask about the people who live with you, kind of your grandmothers or parents who will be vaccinated in the first stages, for your agreement or for their agreement. So don't be afraid. Agreed, and I think in the short period we will have our normal life. Stay safe. In case of any symptoms or any questions, do not hesitate to contact our FLOD hotline. In case of some psychological concerns, you may contact with our mental health counselor. We are here for you 24 hours per week. So we are waiting for your questions in case somebody have. If not, we can finish. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you once again, Dr. Viktoriia. I suggest you to send the slides for presentation into the chat so everybody who wants to dig deeper into the question might access them afterwards. Thank you so much, and I wish everybody a nice weekend ahead.
Thank you, of course, I will share.